Hi everyone, Petrik here, and well, surprised. Today's video will be a spoiler-free book review of The Strength of the Few by James Islington. So yeah, this is the second book in the Hierarchy series and the sequel to The Will of the Many by James Islington, a book that I consider to be a masterpiece and also one of the best fantasy books that I have ever read, of all time, really. And if you have been following my channel this year, and I know we are in the month of August already, I think the last time I did a dedicated book review, it was in January or February. It was for the Hyperion. Yeah, Hyperion by Dan Simmons. So yeah, it has been that long. So one of the main reasons why it has been that long since I posted a book review on my YouTube channel is that I would like to dedicate a dedicated book review on a book that I truly love. A book that I absolutely love rather than a book that I absolutely dislike. When it comes to a book that I dislike, I like to talk about them more in my wrap-up video rather than a dedicated book review. So that's my reasoning. But anyway, today's video, this is entirely about my thoughts, as spoiler-free as possible, about The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is easily one of my most anticipated books of the year 2025, ever since I finished The Will of the Many in 2023, March 2023. I have been waiting for the sequel, for 2 years now, for more than 2 years now. And now I have finally read this, and I think this is another standout masterpiece from James Islington. Another one of my favorite books of all time. It is honestly the final sequel that I have read since Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson and also The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. It is that good. I am really fortunate that an author as good as James Islington is still writing and distributing his strength in storytelling to the pages for us fantasy readers to read. I think if you have been following my channel, one of the things that you might probably realize is that it has been 10 months since I gave a 5 stars rating to a new fantasy book I read. Yeah, it has been really rough. Yeah, the drought has been rough, and I'm glad that the curse has been broken by The Strength of the Few. I remember The Will of the Many was my favorite fantasy book in the year 2023. It was easily my favorite fantasy book of the year, and it was also one of the top 3 best books that I have read that year, together with Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio and also Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. And then this year, I think this will once again replicate that triumph. This will become the best fantasy book that I read this year. It will be really tough to find a new fantasy book that I read for the first time that topped this one. It's just so good. I have been a fan of James Islington since I finished the Licanius Trilogy, which many readers of The Will of the Many has still slept on. Make sure to fix that, okay? The Licanius Trilogy is incredible as well. But yeah, I have been a fan of the James Islington storytelling ever since I finished reading the Licanius Trilogy, and I think The Strength of the Few will make James Islington's fame and critical acclaim more and more popular and more widespread, and I think everything is well deserved. James Islington is one of the best storytellers, and this book and also The Will of the Many just prove that. But anyway, let's talk about my thoughts about The Strength of the Few. Again, as spoiler-free as possible. If you haven't read The Will of the Many yet, I don't know why you're watching this, but at the same time, this review will still be spoiler-free. I will mention some characters' names, only 2 characters' names other than this. The main character, I will use their fake name, which is introduced for the first time in this book. So if you have read The Will of the Many and also maybe some of the preview chapters of The Strength of the Few, you will know who I'm talking about. But if you haven't read The Will of the Many at all, you won't know who I am talking about. I don't think you will know it. It's kind of impossible. Yeah, it's kind of impossible to know who they are. But yeah, truly though, if you haven't read The Will of the Many, make sure to fix that. The Strength of the Few is ambitious and brilliant in every possible way, and I think fantasy readers right now should count themselves fortunate and blessed to have the chance of reading The Will of the Many and The Strength of the Few. So as mentioned, due to the nature of this book as a sequel and also the mind-blowing endings and pretty much everything that happened in The Will of the Many, I will refrain from mentioning characters' names at all in this review, except for this and the other 2 main characters in The Strength of the Few. But this book, it continues immediately from where the Will of the Many ended. Yes, after those mind-blowing epilogue chapters, and this book continued immediately after that ending. And you know what? Everything inside this book is layers and layers of complexity and intricacies. And James Islington, as expected, I'm not surprised by this. If you have read the Licanius Trilogy, you will know that in an echo of things to come and also the light of all that falls, he will always, well, ramp up the complexity and also pretty much all the in-depth world building and also character development of his world. And he did that again in the Hierarchy series. This is not an exception. If you have read The Will of the Many and also the preview chapters of The Strength of the Few, you will know that instantly in the first 5 or 6 chapters, James Islington immediately raised questions, answered some mysteries about the first book, and also gave so many things to look forward to in The Strength of the Few. This does not mean that everything will be answered in this book. That is not the case at all. James Islington still leaves a lot of things to question about and also to be answered in the remaining books of the series, which I think this series will probably be 4 books long. So we're only halfway through the series, and I'm truly grateful for that. I cannot wait to read the other 2 books in the series already. But yeah, again, back to my point, everything in The Will of the Many was not wasted. So The Will of the Many pretty much laid the groundwork for the entire narrative in The Strength of the Few. Do not read this one. If you haven't read The Will of the Many, I know that doesn't need to be said, but I do have to mention that. Make sure to read The Will of the Many first. And also, this is a book that dives deep into the themes of adulthood, grief, freedom, justice, leadership, and also ultimately the meaning behind life and death, and why death, even though it is one of the things that we all fear the most, it is also necessary to have that. And I think everything is just so profound, and I love the themes discussed in The Strength of the Few. There are a lot of things to unravel in The Strength of the Few. There are so many things that it is impossible to discuss them in one video, but I think James Islington made the right call in telling the narrative in The Strength of the Few through the perspective of 3 main characters, all 3 told in the first-person present tense. So this is kind of similar to the second part of Red Rising Saga by Prisman, where the stories shift into multiple point of view characters, and also all of them told in the first-person present tense. So yeah, this is kind of like that. But this book, this series, is not at all similar to the Red Rising Saga or the Kingkiller Chronicle now. Although the comparisons and also the inspiration were definitely there in The Will of the Many, this book has turned into its own thing, certainly in The Strength of the Few. This series has turned into its own thing in The Strength of the Few. And I think if you have read this book, you will understand why. But anyway, I will give you my thoughts about the 3 main POV chapters, POV characters as best as I can and without spoilers. Omne trium perfectum. Everything in 3 is perfect, and this is what James Islington tried to accomplish with the 3 main POV characters in The Strength of the Few. And first of all, we have, obviously, Vis, the main character of The Will of the Many, and I think many readers, myself included, will feel at ease the most with this storyline. It continues again, as I said earlier, immediately from where the previous book left off, and everything that happens in The Strength of the Few makes me really easy to think that this, a few years from now, or maybe sooner than later, I think many fantasy fans will remember this on the like of Kaladin Stormblast, Frodo, Aragorn, and then Darrow of Lycos, and also all the iconic fantasy characters. You know how sometimes you get asked, who is your favorite fantasy and sci-fi characters? And well, these names, most of the times turns out, or maybe a Vin from Mistborn, whoever you decide, okay? So this, a few years from now, or maybe sooner than that, will be in the same situation. I do not think this is even an opinion. I am confident it will happen. Everything that happened to Vis, the character development that he has went through, the brutal ordeal, and also the violent stuff that happened to his life in this book is just absolutely insane. I still can't believe that I have read only 2 books in the Hierarchy series. It felt like I have read 4 books in the series. Usually when I'm reading, other fantasy books, this kind of events that happen in the first 2 books of the Hierarchy series will be told in 3 books or maybe 4 books. And this time we managed to get that, and all the complexities of the world building and also the in-depth characterizations, and also some things that I cannot say about the magic system. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. And that's only this. We still have 2 other POV characters. First, I will talk about Siamun. So Siamun, he's the first POV character in The Strength of the Few. Again, if you haven't read The Will of the Many, do not check the preview chapters, okay? It is filled with insanely many spoilers. Do not check it at all. But the Siamun is the first POV character of The Strength of the Few, and right from the get-go, this is why I mentioned in my brief first impression of The Strength of the Few that the first 5 chapters of this book was already better than every single fantasy book that I read within this year, and Siamun is the main reason why. Yes, Siamun's storyline, the world building is just absolutely awesome. It's just so rare now to find an epic fantasy book with this kind of level. Seriously, it is so hard to talk about the world building without giving any spoilers, but the Ka, the Concurrents, the Gleaners, and also the Scarab. Again, if you have read The Strength of the Few, you will know what I meant by talking about the Scarab. But it's just so insane that James Islington managed to pack everything into this one book. It was staggeringly good. Honestly, it was genius. And then we have finally the last POV character, Diaglan. So this is a bit tricky. I will not lie that Diaglan certainly is the one that took me many pages for me to truly warm up to like his POV chapters as much as Viz and Siamun's storyline. I think Diaglan is, at first, initially, you know what, it kind of felt like a spin-off being inserted into the Hierarchy series, into The Strength of the Few, initially, yeah. But you know what, because I have read the Licanius Trilogy, I knew it is worth persevering, it is worth having faith in James Islington. I know that he's doing something with this character, but why did I mention that this one felt kind of like a spin-off? Well, the reason is this. Instead of Roman-inspired epic fantasy, the story being told in Diaglan felt more Irish and also Celtic rather than Roman. And also the many new characters, the many new names being introduced, it really felt somehow like it is a different book and also a different storyline, but being put in the same world as the Hierarchy series at first anyway. But once we reached the last act of the book, the 3rd act of The Strength of the Few, everything started converging more, and somehow by the end, Act 3 of Diaglan's storyline is one of my favorite storyline in the entire book. Just right after this, somehow Diaglan's storyline in the 3rd act managed to top over Siamun, even though Siamun initially was the best one. So everything kind of felt equal in balance. It was so good. Truly, it was so good. And you know what? I know that there were several valid criticisms about the cover change of the Hierarchy series. I mean, I get it. Cover change sucks. But there is one argument that I have to say that I completely disagree. If you like the previous cover art more, that's totally okay with me. But there is one argument that states the new cover art of The Will of the Many make the book truly feels like a science fiction novel or a science fantasy novel. And that is good. It is a science fantasy novel. This is not a historical fantasy novel. And if you have read this book and you expect this to be a historical fantasy novel, you will be sorely disappointed. This is not where the story is going for. This is going into more a science fiction and also more fantastical territory with each book. And this book proved that notion even more. And the new cover art of The Will of the Many and also this cover art, both of them illustrated by the legendary artist Jamie Jones, well, they gave me goosebumps. They immediately get what I felt about reading the scenes in the respective book. But anyway, before I end this review, James Islington truly reserved the greatest part of his storytelling in The Strength of the Few in the last act of the novel, in Act 3. It is truly awesome. I cannot I cannot say it any other way. It is just amazing what happened in Act 3. Just put it this way. I read the entire 200 pages of Act 3 in one sitting. 4 hours reading sprint. I did that. It was just unstoppable. Everything that happened, everything that transpired, it was just insanity, brutality, and violence. Well, non-stop. And it fits. It truly fits the context and themes of The Strength of the Few. And I think many people who read this book up to the end will be truly impressed by what James Islington has did and achieved with this novel. And seriously, it's only 2 books into the series. It is just mind-blowing to think that, and I think the last time I felt this, it was when I actually read truly amazing books like the Red Rising Saga, the Sun Eater, and also Stormlight Archive. The first 3 books. I haven't read Wind and Truth yet, but that's how I felt. It felt like I have read like 2 or 3 books in one single novel, and that's what I felt from reading The Strength of the Few. You think the last part of The Will of the Many was intense, which it was. James Islington managed to enhance that even more. The devastation, the emotional carnage, and also the river of blood, the vividness of the setting, and also, wow, I just visualized everything that happened again. And yeah, it was just truly incredible. There's nothing else to say. Everything that happened in Act 3 was nothing short of phenomenal. So to close up this review, again, there's so much to say about this book, but that will require me diving into full spoiler territory, and I don't want that. We are still 3 months before the publication of The Strength of the Few, and I want people to have a fresh reading experience of this book as much as possible. But again, The Strength of the Few is currently and will probably last as the best fantasy book that I read in the year 2025. It is again one of the best books that I have read in my life, and it is the final sequel that I have ever read since Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson and The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. It is the best second book of a series as well, and to think that I still have 2 books left to read is just, well, it just makes me happy, okay? This is a magnificent, ambitious, and riveting masterpiece, and I think many people who love reading The Will of the Many, it is hard to imagine a situation where you end up disliking The Strength of the Few. It is just truly incredible, at least as good as The Will of the Many. I have no doubt that the Hierarchy series will become James Islington's magnum opus, and we are practically witnessing a hallmark for the fantasy genre in motion. Islington has crafted something truly extraordinary and special with this series, and you know what? This is effortlessly the best fantasy book of the year. No doubt about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it regarding my thoughts about The Strength of the Few, as spoiler-free as possible. Anyway, I cannot wait for you to read this book. Let me know your thoughts on it when you get around to it. If you have the advanced reading copy, I am not the first reviewer for this book. I have waited purposefully because some of you are actually pissed about me reading and reviewing The Devils much earlier than the publication date. So I tried to wait for The Strength of the Few, and also that gave me time to do a second read of The Will of the Many. And also, yeah, 3 months before the release of The Strength of the Few. This one is being published in November. But although this is not the end of 2025 yet, I feel confident in branding this as James Islington's magnum opus and also the best fantasy book of this year. And I feel sad. Of course, I feel sad that I have to wait for the next 2 books in the series. I think it will be published in 2027 and also probably 2029 or 2030, but it will be worth the wait. Hail James Islington. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. Again, I want to say thank you so much to Saga Press for sending me the advanced reading copy. I cannot wait to have the hardcover copy of this book again. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. Do let me know what you think about this book if you have read the advanced reading copy. If you haven't, let me know whether this is in your most anticipated book of the year or not. As always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.